Experts on the special broadcast, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary MEA, and also Professor Meena Singh Roy from JNU, West Asia expert. Ambassador, we were talking about some convergences and divergences, if at all any, but talking about the conversations that would revolve around conflict resolution, the strong position that the GCC nations took in the recent summit, the GCC summit, especially end of war in the West Asia, the Gaza and Palestine. There's a detailed, portions dedicated to that. So, in that sense of term, how significant is this visit to Prime Minister Modi, considering the whole global image of him as a peacemaker? We saw his visit to Ukraine, then Russia, and so on and so forth.
So, I think it's a very important aspect that Prime Minister will also dwell on with his interlocutors in Kuwait. Because peace is the ultimate objective. Nobody really desires war, but we do see that that region is really fractured because of war. It's very fascinating that, at a time when the Abraham Accords were actually likely to be extended to include more countries in the Arab world, the events of October 7 happened. And thereafter, of course, we all know that the war broke out between Israel and Palestine, and it has wreaked with huge humanitarian loss. And of course, we also see the power balances in the region, particularly the forces of Hamas and Hezbollah are largely decimated. So what we see is that the Arab world in particular, whether it is in the GCC or in the Arab League, we see that they have a very strong opposition to the continuance of the war between Israel and Palestine. We do see that they have a very strong support position for the Palestinian cause, and they would wish to resort to a two-state solution. What we also see is that none of them have actually interfered or intervened directly in the conflict that is raging, though they have been from the sidelines making their observations. And I think in some ways, the position that India has is also somewhat similar, not the same, but somewhat similar. One big difference, and that big difference is that India is extremely friendly with both the Arab side as well as the Israeli side. And if there was to be a factor that could bring the two sides together towards a certain rapprochement, a certain disengagement, then India could be one of those elements that could come about in that particular picture. And so I think Prime Minister has right from the outset been a very ardent and vocal about the need for peace, about negotiated settlements. Officially, we have also stated our preference for the two-state solution. So I think in many ways the Arab side understands our position. And I think the Israeli side understands the position too. Right. But at this point of time, the Israeli side has a very, very strong undertaking for continuance of war.
So we are almost, Professor Roy, your thoughts. How do we negotiate this conversation? India and GCC nations are on the same page when it comes to Israel, Palestine, West Asia, Syria, that part of the conflict.
I think we have, convergence of, views when it comes to the issue of dealing with the conflicts. But at the same time, I am not very optimistic about the peace in that part of the region, because these conflicts, have various dimensions. Now, to expect that, we are going to see peace in that part of the region very soon, that is not likely. To be a realist, I would say that. But I think what is possible is the better management of the conflict, so that one can reduce the negative effect of the violence, the negative effect on the civilians. I think this is what would be my expectation, and this is where I think India's image is very, very important. If we look at how skillfully, Prime Minister Modi can speak to, President Putin, and at the same time also to President Zelensky, so that is the skill which our leadership has, and in this visit, I think he's definitely going to talk about the regional issues and see to it that, peace prevails. But when we are talking about the conflicts in Syria, in Libya, in Lebanon, present situation as it is unfolding between the Gaza and the Israel, I think there are many, I would say, actors, both the global and the regional, with various interests. And those interests are not, probably there is a greater competition also, while everybody wants peace, while everybody wants, development. But I think the situation is much more complex when we are looking at the conflict there. Okay. But I think, what we can aim at is, some kind of a better management of these, situations, to see and look at the humanitarian cost which is being paid. To look at, how medical supplies, how the food, can be provided in the conflict zones.
Okay.
So,
right.
These issues are much more complex and complicated than what we would probably even understand.
Okay.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, despite the conflicts in the region, the Kuwaiti economy is a stable economy, and its dinar is like the strongest currency in the world currently. So why is that the case? I mean, why is their currency so strong? It's currently at what, 275, one dinar is 275 rupees.
Well, that's the pricing of their foreign exchange. But I think you're essentially correct in terms of the fact that the Kuwaiti economy is strong and stable. It is largely still dependent on the hydrocarbon economy, which in times of war actually sees an uptick, because the prices that you get in times of conflict are usually a little higher. And so the returns to the economy from that principal item becomes much better. But what this also means is that the kind of funds that Kuwait has at its disposal are also enormous. For instance, the Kuwaiti Sovereign Wealth Fund is one of the largest in the world, and there are huge opportunities for collaboration on that particular front. Also, it gives them the necessary cushion to be able to transition as they move towards a greener economy as time goes on, as they kind of embrace many of the climate change issues. And so it's an economy that we can engage with both at a bilateral as well as a regional global level.
Also, Professor Roy, in terms of India needs investments, especially for the infrastructure sector, which we hope will have a huge multiplier effect on our growth going forward. India, with the plan to be a developed country by 2047, huge investments in infrastructure required in trillions of dollars. Can we get some money from Kuwait?
Let's hope for the best. We, they have the reference was made to Sovereign Wealth Fund. They have some probably more than 24 billion, dollars fund with them, which is after Norway, China and UAE. So I think, and now to be a little more practical and realist, yes, India is a good, market with the kind of reforms that have been taken up during, past 7-8 years. So I think it's an attractive country for these Gulf partners. And I'm very hopeful with Prime Minister Modi's visit, we should be able to bring more investments from Kuwait. And as I said, the participation and interaction between the two top leaders is more likely to deliver results as compared to the other visits, I would say. So I'm very hopeful that we are likely to see more investments coming after this visit. But at the same time, we also need to ensure, providing a right kind of a, environment to the investors. So I think that would be the key element for attracting more investments.
Okay.
India is an attractive country today.
Yes,
That-
staying
that's-
with investments,
that's-
yeah, staying with investments, economy, and particularly the trade aspect. Kuwait, we do know, is the current chair of the GCC. It's a rotating chair, and it plays an important role as far as India's GCC outreach is concerned. We did talk about that as well. But Ambassador Banerjee, there is already this conversation between India and GCC. They are negotiating a FTA talk to further enhance the trade relations. Do you think that is going to come up, the nitty-gritties and the forward movement on that front?
From my personal experience, I don't think, the nitty-gritty of that will come up at the summit level interaction, because the trade negotiators would go into the nitty-gritty. But just to give you a bit of a background, we had started the GCC FTA about a decade and a half ago, and it was a fairly difficult negotiation because it involved 6 different partners on the Arab side who had slightly differing economies, priorities, and therefore to come out a common understanding was not easy. And it was for that particular reason that the GCC and the UAE decided that we could go ahead with the FTA, or the SEPA as we call it, with the United Arab Emirates. And that was done in very quick time. We have since resumed the negotiations for the GCC FTA. And I think there is broad understanding on the parameters, but I think the nitty-gritty details will take time, and will much greater coordination on the Gulf side, because I think today we are in a stage where we are fairly open to new understandings bilaterally or with the GCC in a regional context, because we understand that in the WTO multilateral context, the possibility of understandings or agreement is still very remote, and therefore we have to work on the regional framework. So we do attach high priority to this. I'm sure they will discuss this, and some broad directives will be given to the negotiators.
Professor Roy, the GCC would be under the Global South, and India, of course, is a strong voice of the Global South, if not the voice of the Global South. So in this context, the relationship with blocs which form part of the Global South is also significant. So how would you view, the Global South narrative as far as the Prime Minister's visit is concerned?
I think the Global South narrative that we have been hearing, and this is where India is the leader, I would say, and there were many hopes, and G20 was also one example of India's success story, where various, I would say, steps do indicate as to how, in practical terms, India has been wanting the voice of Global South to be heard. And, in the era where we are talking about the multilateralism, where we are talking about the voices of the countries who were not heard earlier, I think it's one of the steps that is the key element today in terms of expectations, in terms of delivery. So I think we have to walk along probably road when we are talking about it. We have taken many steps, and this would only strengthen our bond with the Global South. and I only hope that we would probably be delivering much more than what is expected from us.
Ambassador, your thoughts on the Global South narrative, India being the leader, the strongest voice, and also a friend of the Global South, trusted friend.
Right. So I think there is, an evolving idea and understanding of what the Global South is, but it is quite clear that India is definitely at the center of it. There is a certain perception that the Global South needs a leader, and as you might have been familiar, China has staked that claim. But China herself perhaps is not quite a Global South country anymore because the kind of development that it has achieved and the kind of rivalry that it has got into with the United States. And so the position that India has taken is actually far more appealing to the Global South, which is the voice of the Global South. And in the voice of the Global South, it is not just India. You would recall Prime Minister has hosted 3 Voice of Global South summits, 2 of them on during the G20 presidency that we held, which was to bring all these voices. And it's very important to know that each voice in the Global South community is significant, and it should be a sign of assurance and confidence to them. And once that is brought to the larger plurilateral body or the multilateral forum, then we will have a much broader and better understanding of how we deal with the current day challenges, because the contemporary challenges are somewhat beyond the capabilities of the multilateral system as it exists today. It needs reform. Until then, what we do have is we have blocks that are actually working out. You can call them blocks or regional associations.
Okay.
And the voice of the Global South is present in many of these regional groupings, whether or sectoral groupings. And so the voice of the Global South is an expanding understanding and concept in which we have different kinds of partners. They could be small island states, they could be developing countries, they could be emerging economies, they could be energy-rich economies. But I think what they all want is that they want the multilateral system to be reformed. And since we cannot wait for that to happen, because that's going rather slow, in the meanwhile, we work out certain modes of cooperation and collaboration, technical, financial, development, so that we can go ahead with the markers that we have on SDGs or our own development priorities. And that's what I think India has done, to bring the Global South together onto a single platform, to evolve single-mindedly the kind of options that you would wish to advance. And I think we've had great support and understanding from the Global South community on this.
Right.
So we seek leadership, but we want all of them to become participative and to have that confidence to pursue their path.
I'm just going to take a little. Okay, ma'am, please go ahead. Finish your answer.
Can I just add to what Ambassador Mukherjee has said, and I think I completely agree with him. We are in an era where the world is experiencing many conflicts, many challenges, be it climate change, be it pandemic, be it many other traditional and non-traditional challenges. And in this situation, I think the United Nations has not been able to be very effective. And that probably was also one of the key factors. And he alluded to why, the international institution, which the community wants to reform, but you cannot sit back and do nothing. And I think this is where the importance of South-South cooperation and Global South comes in, and where India as a leader has taken up that. We have those groupings and sectoral cooperation in many, sectors. So I think this is something which indicates that we are not going to sit quiet and not talk about it and not do anything. But we will try and see how best we can address those challenges collectively at the regional level, at the trilateral level, at the quadrilateral level. And I think that is what is very, very important to be taken into account.
Right. In fact, Prime Minister Modi met the Kuwaiti Crown Prince on the sidelines of the UNGA in 23rd in September 2024. That was 23rd of September. Al Khalid Al Sabah Al Hamad Al Mubarak Al Sabah. Okay, I'm just a little. I'm going to take a little detour, and if our producer can play those visuals of. The glimpses of little India on display, even a country, a Gulf region like Kuwait, where you have Kathakali, Kuchipuri, Bihu, and our other, cultural glimpses on display. I think that is also, that's really overwhelming. I mean, I find it extremely beautiful. Our Prime Minister there in Kuwait, yes. Okay, we have some live visuals coming from Kuwait of Prime Minister visiting the labor camp. These are the visuals.
Right, indeed. As we said, this is the SPIC labor camp. In fact, these are camps which labor is sourced from different parts of the world, and they provide labor to construction and to other industries. A lot of them are from India, as we can see, and the housing facilities in these labor camps are adequate. Unfortunately, there was an incident, as we did mention earlier, in June in one of these camps in which there was a fire and 46 Indians lost their lives.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जो इस वक्त आपको
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they're interacting with the skilled laborers or skilled technicians, I think that's the better word, the visuals of the Indian labor camp, that's particularly called the Gulf SPIC labor camp in Kuwait. One of the first engagements of Prime Minister Modi. This comes after over 45 Indians, at least 45 Indians lost their lives in a devastating fire in Kuwait earlier this year, and Prime Minister interacting so closely. And I think as we stay with these visuals, Ambassador Bhattacharya, this means a lot, and I think this is historic, and there is so much of symbolism attached to this, that I am with you and I'm here to listen to you, and your welfare is my prime priority.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think Prime Minister Modi walks the talk. We have a very large labor community, as you have pointed out, and many of them are somewhat to the vulnerable sections of the skill segment. And therefore, sometimes their conditions of work are not quite ideal. Sometimes there is also exploitation and people run away. Sometimes the living conditions are very difficult. The fire that you mentioned was not the first time it had happened. And we have taken it up very strongly with the Kuwaiti side. And the government took very prompt and stern action against the people who were running that establishment. And at that point of time, they were very prompt in repatriating the bodies.
We won't be wrong if we say that Prime Minister Modi happens to be the first Indian Prime Minister to have interacted so closely, engaged with the Indian skilled labor there or technicians there so closely, sharing refreshments with them, closely interacting with them, talking to them, listening to their concerns. This is huge.
So Prime Minister going to the labor camp is definitely huge, as you said, because it gives an indication and signal to the Kuwaiti authorities and the employers that they have to improve the conditions of work over there. And at the same time, it gives the confidence and assurance to the Indian worker that there is somebody who will be behind them, who will take care of them if it comes to the worst. So this is definitely a very, very positive development for the skill movement that is so important for our two countries. And these are the kinds of directions that we've been moving towards, because under the objectives of the migration agreements that we have between India and Kuwait and with some of the other Gulf states as well, we've been consistently trying to improve the conditions of work. And Prime Minister's visit to the labor camp could not have been at a better time, because this gives the highest level of assurance to both that more needs to be done.
Highest level of assurance coming from the Prime Minister of India himself, spending so much of time. Ma'am, your take as we stay with these visuals. He's seen interacting with them, and also most importantly listening to them, and they're all smiles. If you look at their expressions, they are very happy.
Had a meal with them.
Yes, he's having refreshments with them. Ma'am, Roy, Professor Roy.
Absolutely. I think, this is, as I said, the key feature of Prime Minister Modi's connect with our own people there, And if we look at, the skilled technicians, you see, their body language, the facial expression, which tells them, here is the Prime Minister of India himself eating with us. Here is the Prime Minister who's going to be taking up the problems that we would ever face in the country or anything. So it is very, very assuring for them, the situation where Prime Minister himself comes and meets them. And I think it speaks a volume about the welfare.
What do you think this is going to translate? Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but just a quick question. What do you think this is going to translate into in terms of having an impact, a positive impact, as far as the social security, the economic security, and their safety of these workforce of Indian origin in Kuwait is concerned, or the Indian workforce in Kuwait is concerned?
What I feel personally is that, this is the message, this is the signaling also to the, Kuwaiti regime, the management, that here is the top leader of India who's worried about the condition of his laborers. He will take into account, the problems that these people are facing. So I think when we talk about the impact and signaling, this is what is going to probably have. I mean, this is what happened when there was a fire, in the labor house in past. And the way, the Kuwaiti regime reacted to it, the government provided all support to them. So this is very, very important element and signaling here. But in practical terms, I think it will have a lot of impact on the future course of action that, both the governments would be taking up while discussing various issues related to our labor force there.
Ambassador Bhattacharya.
And also one point, it is also an era where these countries, there are unemployments, there are internal changes in terms of the labor laws, many other issues are happening internally also. So I think in that context, this is a very, very important initiative by our Prime Minister to go and give that signal.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, it's not only motivating, obviously, to all the labour workforce there in whom the Prime Minister has met, but also to their families back home.
Oh, yes.
Who are witnessing this and obviously getting a chance to see that there is, first of all, that their people are well and safe. And these are the people who send back money to our communities back home and help them to become upwardly mobile, helping the Indian economy at the very, at the demand level, at the consumption level, very significant contributors actually to India's economy.
I agree very much with what you're saying because, to give a little bit of context to this, it's important because there are so many of our workers who go to the Gulf and many of them face very adverse conditions. Over a period of time, we have been working with the Gulf towards improving the bilateral agreements that we have under which these transfers take place so that they have more secure and regular movements and they have a safe and security in their job environment. And recently we collaborated on the Global Compact for Migration, which was done at the United Nations, in which we are a major contributor and participant, which outlines the kind of framework that both sending countries as well as destination countries should have. And this Global Compact for Migration is now something that is more universally accepted and being implemented. And now the Prime Minister's presence at this particular venue is a clear indication that India stands with these developments and the changes that are necessary at the highest level and the highest kind of assurance that can be given to both the workers and their families back at home, as well as to the people who will look after the rules and regulations in the destination country. So this is a very, very strong signal, and I'm so happy that it has happened.
Professor Roy, you want to add to that in terms of signal and then, yes, translating that into some sort of a policy action? There's a message there.
Also, if I can come in just before you come in, ma'am, the Prime Minister takes best examples from different countries and implements them also in India. So to what extent do you think that, I mean, if this is something positive that he sees, can be brought back into the Indian labor workforce here, which is, sometimes exploited here as well, and seen to give the kind of better standards for labor within our country?
Listen, I mean, I think India is a huge country, and the problems of laborers are not, limited to one sector or one situation. We have the private sector, we have the smaller business community who are exploiting it. So, yes, the best practices can be, given and, sort of explained to the people who are dealing with these problems. So from that point of view, I would say yes, the best practices which we see in these countries, it's a small country when we look at Kuwait. And, the resources are different. Here, I think we are looking at a different level. So I am not saying that this can't be done, but I'm sure whatever Prime Minister sees abroad, he would come back and probably convey it to the respective departments, the bureaucrats, and many other, organizations who would probably be dealing with such problems. So the best practices can always come back and be conveyed and ensured by the people who are responsible to implement it effectively.
Yes, Prime Minister's visit to the workers' camp in Kuwait speaks volumes for the fact that the kind of significance and priority India accords to the welfare of its workforce, Indian workforce working in Kuwait. Let's also move on and talk about the other significant itinerary on Prime Minister's agenda, a two-day visit to Kuwait. The participation in the Arabian Gulf Cup. Yes, Arabian Gulf Cup later in the day. He's going to be attending the opening ceremony. The fact that Prime Minister has been invited himself by the Emir, and this happens to be one of their showpiece sporting extravaganza, if I may be allowed to use that word. I think that's a very warm gesture by the Kuwaiti dispensation. Ambassador Bhattacharya?
Yes, well, the Arabian Gulf Cup is a very significant event. We talked about it a little while ago. And the invitation to Prime Minister to be at the foundation, at the opening ceremony is certainly an interesting one, because I think it helps us build about a new kind of collaboration in the field of sport diplomacy. And in many ways, this is something that is an emerging area that many of us are exploring because as the kind of interest of our nation grows and as it diversifies its economy, there are new kinds of areas that it gets into. So tourism, sports, education, health are some of these areas. And in some ways, this soft culture that it kind of brings about. It also marks, it's also an indication of the kind of transformation that is taking place in the Gulf region. For instance, in Kuwait itself, the participation of its population of both genders at many of these events is fairly high, and it's very, very popular sport. So it has an appeal at various levels, and Prime Minister's participation over there will also provide an opportunity for a quiet and informal interaction with the Amir on various other subjects that may not be football, but maybe very sensitive in nature as well.
Right. Professor Roy, to what extent, do these aspects of soft diplomacy from the Arab countries impact the Indians who live in that region? Because we always see the other way around, that they are impacted a lot by what India takes to those countries. Is there, something that we also imbibe from them?
Of course, it is, I would say, a sports diplomacy which works both ways. The soccer lovers are all over the world, and it is Ambassador Mukherjee did mention about how the Saudi Arabia, and we've seen the Qatar, how it brought in, and it is linked to the economic development and the incentives which it will bring to not only the country specific. So from that context, it's a win-win situation for both. From India's perspective, I would say we have a huge Indian community living there, and if I understand even one bit, the community does enjoy sports. We've seen the number of Indians who were, who tried so many ways to reach, Doha when it was the World Cup there. So I think Kuwait.
I'm going to just interrupt you for 3 seconds because earlier we were talking about these, visuals of India's classical heritage dances on display in heart of Kuwait. You're looking at Kathakali, you're looking at Bihu, you're looking at Kuchipudi, and this is Prime Minister Modi in Kuwait. Little India in every nook and corner of the world, including Kuwait.
Absolutely. It is whether we look at West Asia, whether we look at Central Asia, or we look at any other part of the world, Indian culture, Indian religion, Indian spiritual dimension of India, which is also, yoga. So I think the strong basis of, this soft power diplomacy that we've seen in a much more effective way as it has been seen in past 10 years, I would say, is phenomenal. So displaying, and there is a greater acceptance, we've seen, the local community learning, Indian dances, music. So I think it is just not what you see, their Indian diversified culture being projected, but it also attracts the attention of the local people. I mean, the India culture centers are there in various embassies. And, how they project, there are teachers, you have huge number of students, wanting to learn those, art which India is very famous for, whether it's Kathakali, whether it is Bharatnatyam or Bihu or, music also, and instrumental musics as well. So I think there are a lot of takers locally, I would say. This kind of a projection of Indian art and music and culture and yoga, including in that, gives, a strong basis of people-to-people connect. Now, you would see even the 10-year-old kid, coming and learning these arts from India. So I think this is
Yes.
one part of our bond that will help strengthen the people-to-people contact. So from that point of view, I think it's a very, very important.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, we often look at, we divide the world geographically, and we've been calling this region West Asia, and we look at, a policy of Act East. But if we look at the world from their point of view, they have also been acting East, isn't it? They've been developing very close ties with a lot of the countries to their east, and expanding all their trade, etc., with Asia to a large extent. How do you view this, geographically, and how the GCC looks at the region and Asia as a whole?
I like the way you described it as the Act East of the Arab world or of the GCC. In fact, it's a very interesting concept. It is true, for a very long time in the region of the Arabian Peninsula has been deeply connected with South Asia, or India in particular. And it was the flow of philosophy. The Basra Pearl came from the region that is off the seas of Kuwait, and the spices traveled back and forth. So the connect has been there for a very long time. People understand each other at a deep, fundamental, cultural, civilizational level. And I think that, in a sense, gives them the comfort to actually engage in the transformations that are happening today. And the transformations that are happening today are, to expand the huge energy sector that they are so richly endowed in, but more importantly, to engage in the transformation that they have to make, because the oil is not going to last forever, or they cannot exploit it forever. So what is the transition that they make? And you will see how many of these GCC countries are making that transition and choosing key partners. And for each of them, obviously, then they go back to the countries or the people that they're more comfortable with. And for the Arab world, to be comfortable with somebody is an extremely important aspect when they try and build a partnership or a new relationship. And that happens very naturally with India. So I think in many ways, we are also what I call natural partners. And we don't have differences between us. We have only common points, and the kind of ability that we can have to develop upon them is only limited by the kind of engagement that we have, that we actually indulge in. And to some extent, I would say that the relationship with the GCC is somewhat underdeveloped. It has much more potential. And I think the potential becomes much greater to be realized when both sides are going. And today, both sides are undergoing and conscious of that transformation, in India particularly, as you see. So I think the partnership between GCC and India in particular, and of course going further on to the rest of Asia as well, is poised for a very fundamental transition that is going to address the challenges and interests of the world of tomorrow. And I think that is one of the key issues that Prime Minister will be discussing with his interlocutor.
Professor Roy, in terms of the multipolar world that is emerging, and the fact that more and more countries of significance are playing a bigger role, India, of course, being one of them, how would you view BRICS, for one, and its expansion? Also, some of the GCC countries were invited to join BRICS. How would you look at this particular grouping and its kind of role going forward, looking at this particular area and India's role in it?
I think I call it new regionalism,
Okay.
We are in an era where we've seen that the world is divided. We also see that, there are major challenges affecting certain, regional countries. And from that point of view, I think the BRICS is an important, organization. But are we for, part of a regional grouping because it is anti-West or pro-China or pro-Russia. I don't think that is what is the point which we need to talk about, and this has been clarified by a foreign minister. It has been clarified by a prime minister. So I think these groupings are meant to see the benefits which it can provide the regional countries, but there are also challenges. Let me say, none of these organizations are free from the challenges. But the goal is to ensure development. The goal is to bring, the regional partners who would work on the common agendas, the common developmental issues. But at the same time, there would be some challenges as well. So from that point of view, you see the expansion of BRICS is something which was very, very natural, But at the same time, there is also a provision saying that if you bring in too many, countries as a permanent members, then the whole purpose of it gets diluted. So the other way to deal with is that you bring the partners, you bring the dialogue partners, where you have the discussion, but you also don't deny the involvement of the other countries. For example, we have UAE, but Saudi Arabia has been invited. They haven't, joined as such the BRICS for now. So BRICS has its own significance. It has its own agendas. It has its own goal. And I think India is very clear, when it talks about its involvement in the BRICS. So from that point of view, I see that it is about bringing and addressing the common challenges. And also, we are seeing the narrative of de-dollarization,
yes,
when
I was wanting to come to that actually, yes.
BRICS and SCO, but that has been clarified. That is not what India is looking at. We are looking at dealing with the common challenges together. So this is how I look at it. It has its own benefits. It has its own merits, but it also has to deal with the challenges within it. Now, the success of these, groupings or, regional organizations, you may call it, it will depend on the countries, how they address the problems, and they get above the very narrow interest of theirs. So I think this probably will put them on the path of addressing the common challenges collectively and effectively.
Right, Ambassador Bhattacharya, we continue to see on our screen the Prime Minister's interaction with workers at the SPIC program. But, I was talking a little earlier about how they bring in foreign exchange into the country, and Professor Roy was talking about de-dollarization. Not that one can connect the two, but the point is that if we have to see the importance of foreign exchange coming into India, how crucial are these areas and the Indian diaspora in facilitating that?
Of course, I think remittances are an extremely important aspect of migration because when Indian workers go overseas, essentially what they're doing is they're diversifying their risk portfolio so that some members of the family may be staying back and looking after the farm at home, while some members go to the Gulf and earn some foreign exchange and send it back home. We are, as you know, the largest recipient of foreign remittances globally, and it has grown quite significantly in recent times. And there was a point of time when the share of remittances from the Gulf was very high. In fact, it was about 70% about 6 years ago or 7 years ago. But today it has fallen to under 50%. In other words, the share of remittances from the Gulf region has fallen, although not in absolute terms, because it's still growing in absolute numbers, but the share has gone down. And the reason why this is happening is because the per capita income in the Gulf region for the migrant worker or the Indian diaspora that is working, many of whom are in the low-skilled jobs, has not really grown at the same pace as the income levels that have risen in other parts of the world. And therefore, part of the attempt is to bring about a greater skilling exercise for our people, because if you are better skilled, if you are better provided in terms of the technical qualifications, then you have a higher prospect of earning a better income. And that's one of the things that we try and do, as well as other ways in which we try and improve the income level. Remittance back home,
Okay, we must tell our viewers and our guests also that we are standing by for yet another special event on day one of Prime Minister Modi's engagement, which happens to be the inauguration ceremony of the Arabian Gulf Cup. It's a premier sporting event, sporting extravaganza in the Gulf region, and Prime Minister Modi is a very, very special invitee, a distinguished invitee rather. And as we talk about this and the other optics and the significance of this visit of Prime Minister Modi to Kuwait, DD India's Akshay Dogre joins us on a phone line from the very event where which takes the center stage now. Akshay, over to you. Like now, we saw those visuals. First of all, I think you were present there at the workers' camp in Kuwait when Prime Minister visited there a while back, and interaction with them, sitting with them, talking to them, having a meal with them. I think take us through what all happened inside and also what is expected next.
See, I was present in that very hall where Prime Minister interacted, and one thing that perhaps every worker there said when they spoke with us is that they didn't feel like they were speaking to a Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy, a Prime Minister of 140 crore people. They said that they felt like they were speaking to a family member. These are people who stay away from their families, who have been staying away from their home, from their country, from their family members. And this is perhaps they care about the most. This personal touch. A personal touch of a family member, and that's what they felt today when Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with them. PM asked about their personal lives, PM asked about their families, PM asked these workers do they want and how do they see India now, before they left and now that they see the country progressing, leaps and bounds. So everyone was in one voice. They said that they are proud of the way the country is developing. They're proud of the way the country is making progress. And in fact, the kind of leadership that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has showed to the world, they also feel quite respected now, much more than before. In the country that they have been working at. Here, even their social status, even their respect has been elevated with the kind of leadership Prime Minister Narendra Modi has showed to the world, the kind of center stage that India has now taken when it comes to global affairs. And this is not only being felt, at the level of geopolitics. This is also a feeling that these people feel who are the building blocks of the society here in Kuwait. These are people who are the largest expat community of Kuwait. Indians form the largest expat community in Kuwait. Over 1 million people work here in every sphere of life. And this is what they felt when they interacted with the Prime Minister. That a friend was talking to them, a family member was inquiring about them, and a family member who watches over them, who protects them, who provides them security. So that was the feeling that every worker who interacted with the Prime Minister had.
Akshay, so as you're with us, we are standing by also for this community event at the Sheikh Saad Al Abdullah Sports Complex in Sabah Al Salem area of Kuwait. This is the community event which is only by invitation and it hosts about 4,000 to 5,000 people max. Tell us a little bit about this event and, about the preparations and what we can expect.
Well, absolutely. It is going to be another magnificent event that is going to take place in Kuwait. You have rightly mentioned that a lot of preparations have taken place for this particular event, and Prime Minister will be, in fact, interacting with other diaspora members as well. This is a community event as well. A lot of Indian diaspora members will be present, and as far as Prime Minister's interactions, Prime Minister's focuses have been seen in the past. PM this time as well is making it a point to not only talk about the current issues or the relation between the two countries, but also the people-to-people connect, the living bridge that these diaspora members form between the two countries. PM when he interacted with the workers here, at the labor camp, he rightly mentioned that it took a lot of time for a Prime Minister of India to come and meet these people after 43 years, and Indian Prime Minister has come, and this personal touch that was needed, that there was a lack of this personal felt by the people here, that has been fulfilled. That vacuum has been filled by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's activities here today, and we can over the period of next 24 hours as well, we can see a lot more are taking place, where Prime Minister will make it a point to ensure that anything and everything that the Indian diaspora here needs, he will make sure that they get as well.
Right, we continue to show the visuals of the workers' camp. Tell us a little bit about the workers, Akshay. They obviously come from different parts of India. One can clearly see that they must be speaking different languages, and yet they are all one and united, as we can clearly see as well in receiving the Prime Minister.
Can you repeat your question?
I was talking about how, as per the visuals, we can clearly see that the workers in this camp come from different parts of India. Obviously, they'll be speaking different languages because that's the nature of our country. So, in this context, how, just put into context to the meeting with Prime Minister, and how, it's a really case of unity and diversity.
Well, absolutely. In fact, when we were present inside that particular hall, we felt as if we were inside a mini India. Prime Minister interacted with workers from Orissa, from Maharashtra, from Gujarat, from Andhra Pradesh, from almost every part of the country. When he spoke to an Orisi worker, he started the conversation by saying Jai Jagannath. When he interacted with a Marathi worker, he made a point to speak in Marathi a little bit before he started speaking in Hindi. With the Gujarati worker, he in fact said Kem Cho, which is how are you in Gujarati. He in fact interacted in Gujarati as well. When he spoke to a Tamil worker, he started the conversation by saying Vanakkam. PM has always made it a point to make sure that this unity in diversity is respected by him as well. That people not only feel that he's the Prime Minister